There's nothing in my experience or your experience of life that validates that life comes from non-life or that order and design come from chaos. Read Matthew chapter 16, where Jesus deals directly with his identity. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven."
I'm not saying they're trying to say that he is Moses. I'm trying to say they're trying to relate to a Jewish audience.
Sure.
So whenever you talk about, if you present his teachings,
yes,
it makes sense for him to go up on the mount and give his sermon and his teachings. And it also closely is tied to the Ten Commandments, and he goes through and he basically rewrites them or reinterprets them to an extent, right, and expands on them. And so if that's the case, where Matthew either included this because to relate to the Jewish audience, and Mark and Luke didn't have it in there for whatever reason, what does that lend to the credibility of the Gospels as an accurate picture of Jesus' life?
Oh,
if they...
You bet. I love it. I am very, very grateful that the four Gospels give us four unique, different perspectives on Christ. I would hate it if all four Gospels were carbon copies.
Okay, but don't at the same time they contradict each other.
Oh,
there
how
are
do they
inaccuracies. For example, the cleansing of the temple.
Yeah.
And John, well, actually, let's look at the synoptics, and which is true.
In light of the fact that the synoptics are not claiming to give us a chronological account,
yeah,
but obviously they're lumping teachings and miracles to make points. You know, we don't have some big contradiction. Now, did he cleanse the temple once or twice? I don't know.
Well,
I lean towards believing he just did it once.
Okay.
But then the intent of the author is to put these events of Christ and the teachings of Christ in blocks. You obviously see them blocks in Matthew. He's got narrative. He's got the Sermon on the Mount. He's got more narrative. Then he's got sending out of the 12, and then he's got the parables. So, you know, there's not a problem with the different chronologies because they're not claiming to give precise chronology.
I would disagree because, like in John, if the cleansing of the temple doesn't happen, then according to Mark's gospel, then he's not crucified.
No, Mark is not. None of them are saying that the reason Jesus was crucified is because he cleansed the temple. The cleansing of the temple was just one issue. It obviously infuriated the people who ran the temple. It's totally understandable. Jesus was not nailed to a cross because he kicked over some tables in the temple.
It says, and then when the chief priests and the scribes heard it, they kept looking for a way to kill him, for they were afraid of him, because the whole crowd was spellbound by his teaching.
Good.
And when the chief priests and scribes heard of it, referring to the cleansing of the temple. So all of a sudden...
No. It says that the people were spellbound by his teaching. Come on now.
It says, whenever they heard of it being the cleansing of the temple, and it goes on to talk about them being spellbound, but the cleansing of the temple is obviously key there.
Well, it's one of the incidents that really galled the Pharisees and Sadducees.
Did it happen after the triumphant entry into Jerusalem, or did it happen earlier in his life?
I do not know. What difference does it make to you?
Because I think it matters about the credibility of the Gospels. Because the only way you can make sense of it, that it's taken from different sources and different oral traditions and everything. Is that what you're trying to say here?
No, all I'm saying is the gospel authors had different themes. You're right. Matthew was writing to a Jewish audience. That's why he shows how many of the Old Testament prophecies Jesus fulfilled. You're absolutely right. None of the Gospels are claiming to give a precise stopwatch chronological account. They're obviously taking themes and lumping the material around certain themes.
Yeah. So
there's not some big contradiction here.
So if the Gospels are picking and choosing what they want to incorporate, it's not even picking and choosing. If you look at it, developed over time. Do you not agree? The Gospels, they were written in a certain order. Mark probably came first. Luke and Matthew derived or took some from, or based on Mark largely, and they also incorporated other oral traditions, correct? Or like the two-source hypothesis. Do you think it's valid?
think it's possible, but sir, 100 years ago, it was taught on every major university campus that the Gospels were not written until the 300s. And all manuscript finds have done have pushed the writing of the Gospels right back into the 1st century.
And we're
the Gospels were written in the 1st century.
Yeah, we're more valid.
Which means eyewitnesses were there. Eyewitnesses wrote them, or people who knew eyewitnesses like Mark and Luke.
Disagree with that. Do you think the case of the Gospel of John and Matthew were actually written by a disciple?
Sure. Irenaeus writes that very clearly in 180 AD.
180 AD? That was a little bit... Do you think he knows? Honestly,
yeah.
And if you look at... So, okay, let's ignore that for a second. And
he knows a lot better than some dude sitting on a university campus in 2006. Why? Because he knew the guys who knew the eyewitnesses.
Did he?
He's much closer. And Irenaeus writes very clearly that Matthew wrote Matthew in the Hebrew tongue. Probably means he wrote it in Hebrew or maybe Aramaic. And Mark wrote Mark with Peter's help. Yeah.
Does the text of Matthew does it not indicate that it was probably written in the original Greek? The actual...
Yeah, it could have easily been written in the original Greek.
So then...
The oral presentation of the gospel was what the 1st century church thrived on. It's what they wanted. Then as the disciples started getting older and started dying, the importance of the written record was highlighted.
Yeah, obviously. And so the apostles... you have Jesus dying around 30 AD.
Right.
So, and then the first Mark was probably written in 50 to 60 CE, correct?
Quite possibly.
Okay, so you have 20 or 30 years past there for the oral tradition of Mark. At the same time, when you look at Matthew and Luke, they build off of Mark, but they also incorporate other oral traditions, and each has one from a mutual source, or one mutual source, and then they have other stuff that's unique to them come in. And so how much... I just don't see the Bible, then, what we have on it, giving any sort of an accurate enough picture where we can derive theology from it and base a religion on it. Because if things are taken from so many different sources, and there's stuff that's in some Gospels that isn't in the other, and only in the stuff that is common between them, you can trace to an original source. Either, like, if you look at Matthew and Luke, the commonalities between them go back to Mark, and the things that are not common come from another oral tradition. And so if that's the case, again, how do you build theology upon that?
Sir, I think, for me, you're digging your own grave.
Well,
you are asserting a degree of precision to a text that if you applied those same tests to any other text, you'd wipe it out.
Okay. So then
you are being dishonest intellectually, as are many New Testament scholars, in the degree of stringency that you're applying to the text of the New Testament. If you were to be intellectually consistent and apply that to Herodotus, Suetonius, Homer, any other, Plutarch, Arian, anybody who writes some history, you'd wipe out all of history.
So
the overwhelming evidence is that the manuscript evidence, the date of the manuscript, the number of manuscripts, the archaeological evidence, the internal consistency for the New Testament is overwhelming. If you were to take Bultmann's test, Rudolf Bultmann, the German New Testament scholar, his tests that he uses to ascertain how many people wrote different of those letters, like Peter, 2 Peter, and 1 Peter, if you were to take his tests and apply them to Rudolf Bultmann, you'd come up with 5 different Bultmanns who wrote what Bultmann wrote, which should tip you off to the fact that these tests, and you're doing a great job articulating them, are so unfair academically. It's double standards all over the place that these New Testament professors that you're studying with are applying. Just take those same tests and apply them to the Quran, the teachings of the Buddha, Herodotus, any ancient history, and you just blow it all out of the water. You just done away with all the history.
You could also say that they're not accurate. So
no, you can't.
I mean, you're
except by being so biased. It's scary.
What?
Just do what C.S. Lewis did. C.S. Lewis took Rudolf Bultmann's test that he used to try and dissect the New Testament, and C.S. Lewis, a great linguist, language, literature professor at Oxford and Cambridge University, just took Rudolf Bultmann's test, applied him to Rudolf Bultmann's own writings, and he came up with 5 different Bultmanns who wrote what Bultmann wrote, which should help you understand it's intellectually dishonest to be so precise with a text and demand that this text reach a standard of objectivity. If you want to play that game, go ahead, but I'm warning you, you're intellectually dishonest. You can't be consistent with your tests.
Can you talk on the existence of free will in a mechanical world? Sort of, you know, the laws of physics are very rigorous and rigid, and it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense to me that we could have some sort of freedom when we're governed by physical particles and all of these things.
You bet. My experience in life, my observation of life is that we do have a physical body that operates on very stringent laws. I have a younger brother who's a transplant surgeon. He studies these laws and he transplants kidneys and livers, and it's a very precise science, very precise medical procedure. I am convinced that there is more to you than just that precise, specific physical description. I am convinced that you have the ability to think rationally and amazingly creatively. I am convinced that you have the ability to do great good or to choose to do great evil, and that you have a conscience and a rational mind, and by exercising your rational mind and your conscience, you will make decisions about whether to use your talents to slaughter or to promote life.
Sure.
My experience is that I have a free will.
It seems like that, but I mean, what ultimately distinguishes us from a very intelligent machine?
Free will?
I mean, how can you prove the existence of free will? That's kind of what I'm getting at. And it seems like if you really sit down and consider it, you can't really explain it in the context of a world that's governed by physical laws all the way down to the atoms that compose your cells.
So, tonight, I will sit on the side of my bed and I will judge myself. I will say, Cliffe, when you spoke to that student, you got too ticked, too upset, you were disrespectful. Don't repeat that. Cliffe, when you spoke to this other student, that was good. By my ability to perceive myself, to judge myself, I insist that that is an example of free will.
I mean, that could be thought of as an example of like machine learning and artificial intelligence. You examine yourself and try to achieve better outcomes, and so you could see the way that you handled yourself today, and maybe you didn't get the results that you wanted, so you can reflect, and the next time you learn. And that's kind of the same thing that an artificial intelligence algorithm would do. Some of them.
But my experience is, my observation of myself is,
I just don't see what's the fundamental distinguishing characteristic that we have that makes us not a very sophisticated machine. The emotions maybe, but I mean you can't really prove that you have an emotion. You can feel it inside of yourself, but I can't prove that to you that I feel anything. What I'm saying is, internally you know that you have free will, but how could you write it out on paper and prove it to someone else?
You can't. And if anybody tries to maintain that they live their life based on proof, I think they're lying to themselves and to you. We don't base our lives on proof, we base our lives on evidence.
Sure. I mean, it feels like you have free will. That's for sure.
Well, not only that, we base our legal system on it.
Right. I mean, that could be a problem. But
I think it'll be a problem if we don't base our legal system on free will.
yeah, you're right. There's not much else you could do, but yeah, I was just wondering if you've had any answers for that. It's a hard problem. I've been talking to some Christian friends of mine, and I can't seem to get my brain around it. I'm trained as a physicist, so I can't seem to understand what I have that makes me free. Because it seems like all of the particles in my brain are governed by laws. So my thoughts must be in some sort of a sense describable in some sort of complicated equation. So I kind of have a hard time going to faith because I think faith needs for me to be choosing, and I don't see myself as a choosing being. I see myself as a very complicated robot.
So why do you get so excited when another robot says she loves you?
I mean, you can explain that in terms of genetics. That's quite simple. I mean, we're here to procreate.
Prove it. Prove it. Prove it.
I guess I can't.
You obviously can't.
Right.
In fact, there's nothing that you've just said to me that you can prove.
Well,
you have faith.
I can't prove to you that I'm made out of particles that ultimately follow laws, but I can go in and do a lot of experiments in the lab, and you can see that all of my atoms seem to exhibit characteristics that are describable by laws. And then I can use my intelligence and say, well, since my body's made out of these things that follow laws, if I compose the whole thing out of something that follows laws, then ultimately I'm going to follow laws.
Can you scientifically prove your logic? No.
Right?
No, you can't. You use logic, you use it well. But you can't scientifically prove that your logic is right.
Right.
Logic
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
intangible.
Absolutely.
So you have faith in stuff that you cannot prove scientifically.
Sure.
So
But
do I.
what I try to do is I try to limit the number of things that I believe on faith alone. And I think that if I were to, so I already believe in my logic, but then I think that if I were to step out on a limb and like believe that I have free will, then that would mean I would have to put my logic aside in that respect, but then I would keep it in so many other respects in my life. And I try to, I guess, simplify things, and that seems like it would make things more complicated.
Well, I am convinced that if you insist upon everything being determined biochemically,
Right?
that you are going to have major complications in your family, your marriage, or your relationships.
How come?
Because relationships are not based on proof. Relationships are based on trust, based on evidence.
Right?
Relationships are based on love.
Sure.
And love is not a biochemical reaction, it's a decision to freely care for another person. In fact, to care for them so much that you put their interest before your own.
Right.
In fact, you care for them so much that when they do you dirty, you choose to forgive them instead of cut them off at the knees.
Right. But I mean, that might not be. I think that you can love without having free will. I think that it could just be some sort of. I think that it could be some sort of evolutionary product. It's advantageous for the survival as a species to have love. To create strong familial bonds, I mean, that's definitely good for the procreation of human beings, for the survival of our offspring and stuff like that. So I don't know if you actually have to have choice in order to love or to feel. I'm not compelled. I mean, I don't choose to be happy. It just sort of comes to me. I don't know if that makes any sense. I don't think that you need to have free will in order to have a healthy family, for example.
I think it's real clear that you have to have love to have a healthy family.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by love, I don't just mean endorphins going off at the right time. I mean consistent decisions to put the well-being of someone else before my own.
Right.
I think it's a real option for me to be a deadbeat dad.
Sure.
No, I think I have to be a responsible father.
Right. I totally agree with you in that respect. I think that it's convenient to live your life like you have a choice. That's probably why our legal system is based on the idea of people having choices, because it helps you make sense of the world you live in. But I don't know if fundamentally it's a real thing. Like I choose to forgive my girlfriend whenever she hurts me, and I love her, and I feel these things for her, and I choose to treat her in certain ways. But I use the word so that I can communicate to you effectively. I don't know if there's ultimately a choice on my part. I might be completely compelled to treat her in the way that I do because of, the fact that we match up biochemically or something. We're going to have good offspring. So I think that I use the word choice so that I can explain to you what goes on inside of me internally, but I don't know if there's actually a real choice that takes place fundamentally. And I think that kind of thing is really necessary if you're going to have true religious thought. So
Why don't you date your computer?
because it doesn't give me the response that she does. I mean, that's obvious.
No, it's not obvious. When I was at
Absolutely.
MIT, there was a guy dating his computer.
Well, thank God they keep the wackos up in Boston. So,
It's an incredibly judgmental statement.
no, I mean, the reason I don't date my computer is because it doesn't give me the same feedback that my girlfriend does. If my computer could provide me with the sensual gratification that she does, the emotional comfort that she provides me with in all respects, then sure, why not? But she's a much more complete entity than in terms of what I need than my computer is. So I don't think that proves that we have a choice.
Is there anything wrong with brainwashing a person?
I don't know, because then, I mean, I think once you start talking about right and wrong, you kind of need an absolute morality, and I don't know if I've developed something like that yet. So I would say yes, but I don't know fundamentally if there is. What are you getting at?
Free will.
right?
I mean, obviously, if we don't have free will, obviously, if what you say is right,
Right.
then
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with brainwashing
I mean, so
someone,
yeah,
because
these are
they never had a
problems that I
free
have.
will in the first place. So if you brainwash them, you're not doing anything wrong.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, if you don't have free will, it's kind of hard to even talk about morality, period. I mean,
Isn't it?
yeah, it's hard to have personal responsibility and all of those things. So,
Exactly.
I mean, it's a good concept to have, and I think it's necessary for our society to function. But I don't know if it's a fundamentally real thing.
So what are you going to do if your girlfriend gets murdered?
I'll be upset. I mean, that's obvious, and I'll be angry. I mean, I'll feel things. It's not like I'm a cold, emotionless thing just because I don't believe in free will. I still have the same feelings that you do. It's just I don't know if I am a choosing thing. I mean, I just might have a different conception of myself than you do. It doesn't mean that I'm cold. It doesn't
What's
mean that
wrong
I
with
don't.
being cold?
What's that?
What's wrong with being cold?
Well, I can't make myself feel the things that I feel. I love her because I do. I didn't choose to love her. I just did. I saw her and I thought she was beautiful, and she treats me really well. And I didn't actively say I'm going to love her. It just happened. I don't know if there's anything wrong with being cold.
So you'd never marry her, would you?
Sure I would. I mean, it's a good idea. I think that it'll be good economically for the two of us.
Well, what happens if it stops being economically beneficial for the two of you? And what happens if you all of a sudden one day wake up and don't have those same feelings gyrating through your body that you once did?
You mean like the emotional connection and the physical? Then I think that we would go our separate ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that just is a pragmatic way to deal with the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Does that have anything to do with free will? I don't know.
Do you think your mom and dad were ever tempted to say, you know, this little baby's a pain in the neck. I hate changing diapers. And the way this baby keeps me up late into the night is a pain in the neck. So why shouldn't I discard this baby? Think they were ever tempted to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that they check themselves because that wouldn't, I mean, they would go to jail, obviously, and there's all types of repercussions for doing something like that. You can't do that because our society is not structured in such a way to do that. But I'm sure that in other more primitive societies, people did disregard or discard their babies after they didn't want to deal with them. Again, I don't know if this is speaking on the problem of actually like getting to whether or not we have a free will. People behave in weird ways, but I don't know if that means that we're like not mechanical. I mean,
Well, sir, the world that I live in, I can't speak for you, but the world that I live in is comprised of individuals who at times exercise their free will in a highly responsible way.
True.
And that's why I have the utmost respect for them, be they a Gandhi or a Dr. Martin Luther King. And then other people choose to exercise their free will in a highly irresponsible way, as I would define it, be they members of the KKK or the guy who shot Dr. Martin Luther King. And I am keenly aware of the fact that at times I could cut someone off at the knees, but instead I exercise my free will and choose to do the opposite of what my natural desire is, and I choose to forgive. And I deal with people who've experienced guilt and regret the decisions they made, and I deal with people who are very proud of other decisions they made. So, sir, that's the world that I live in, and the world that I live in obviously is filled with people who have free will, and they feel very responsible for the decisions they make, and at times they're very embarrassed by the irresponsible decisions they make.
Sure.
They judge themselves. I judge myself. So,
I don't know. Hard question.
For me, it's
maybe it's
a
obvious.
no-brainer. For me,
Yeah.
based on my observations of human beings and my observation of myself, I think it's rather clear that we have free will.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll keep thinking about it. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
You believe that God exists because you exist, right? Because the world exists.
No.
The universe itself. That's your evidence?
No, I believe that God exists because order and design exist,
Complex.
demanding an intelligent mind. I believe that God exists because I have a conscience that informs me of moral absolutes. There's got to be a moral lawgiver. I believe that God exists because the Big Bang tells us there's a beginning to the universe. Everything that has a beginning has a cause. The universe has a beginning, therefore the universe has a cause. That's the type of evidence that convinces me God exists.
So why doesn't there have to be a cause for God itself?
Good question. Because God doesn't have a beginning.
He has no beginning or end, right?
Exactly. And it used to be thought that the universe was eternal. But the Big Bang shows us, no, the universe is not eternal.
Well, the Big Bang doesn't necessarily tell us that the universe isn't eternal.
Absolutely, yes. At this point,
Because there could be, technically multiple universes.
no, that's not what the evidence points to. It's not the... Now, maybe if the evidence comes up tomorrow or tonight that that's true, fine. But at this point, the evidence is before the Big Bang, there was nothing. That could change tomorrow, I know that. But today, the evidence is before the Big Bang, there was nothing.
So, I mean, it still comes down to you're saying that God has always existed, and then you throw the entire reasoning out the window in God's case. I don't know how you can do that.
So what out the window?
You throw all your reasoning out the window. You say all of this is way too complex.
No.
It has to be this way. God has to exist in order to explain this.
That's not what I'm saying.
Existence has to be explained by some supernatural being that exists outside the natural known laws of the universe. I mean, that's the way it appears to me.
I found it on the way to school. Incredible. The way the metal just sort of came together. Isn't it amazing the way the glass just sort of fit into place? And the extra pieces of metal just sort of fell off. If you thought I believed that, you'd be hightailing it out of here as fast as you could. Cliffe, you're an idiot. Why? Order and design demand an intelligent mind.
Evolution itself doesn't necessarily mean there's no order there. It's natural selection. There's reasoning behind it. There's logic there. It doesn't say God just randomly created a human being. I mean, my postulation to you is maybe there is a God, maybe there's not, but I think it's completely pointless to think you can possibly know God, because it's supernatural. It would exist. It'd be something beyond anything comprehensible. So anybody that says they, know God is just full, in my opinion. If God
Why
exists,
on earth would you conclude that anybody who says they know God is fooling themselves?
They're not fooling themselves. I mean, you can't possibly understand God if it exists, because it would be supernatural.
Yeah, but isn't it possible that a supernatural God could choose to reveal himself?
It's never revealed himself to me, and I think for the most part, people that claim God has revealed himself to them are just... Why would God just suddenly reveal himself to you and not me?
Well, obviously the claim of Jesus that he is God revealing himself to you. So read the Gospels for yourself. Don't take it from me.
Well, I've read the Gospels.
Well, what do you think about Jesus after reading the Gospels?
I like Jesus. I think he had very great ideas. No different than the ideas that Buddha has, or that many other philosophers have.
You've read the Gospels and you've concluded that Jesus didn't claim anything different from Buddha?
No. Jesus claimed apparently that he was God. That God.
Good. God in human form.
Mary or whatever, just
yeah.
She was a virgin. I don't believe that that's true. I don't.
Well,
believe
why?
It. Why don't I believe that?
Yeah.
Well, why do you believe it?
Why do I believe that? Because I begin philosophically with the presupposition that there's a God, a supernatural God, and therefore, if there is a supernatural God, this God who created the natural laws can change a natural law, perform what you and I call a miracle. And a virgin can conceive and give birth to a child.
But you believe that based on faith. There's no reason for it.
No, there's lots of reason that I believe that God exists.
What's the logical reason?
Order and design point me to an intelligent mind. The beginning of the universe points me to a cause. Moral absolutes point me to a moral lawgiver.
But still, like you said, God exists, correct?
Yeah, that's evidence that God exists.
But why do you suddenly throw everything out the window when it comes to God himself? Like, why do you say there's no reason for God to exist? God just always existed. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Because that's what... It's real simple.
You believe that based on faith.
The universe is not eternal. The universe has a beginning. Therefore, the universe has to have a cause. The most plausible explanation is there's an eternal being, an uncaused cause, who causes the universe. That's God.
There's science. Modern scientific understanding doesn't say that the universe had to be in it. There is no. I don't know where you're coming up with that.
Oh, I see. Okay. So what I hear you saying is, unless you can scientifically prove it to me, it's not true.
No. I'm saying that I admit that I can't possibly understand anything that would exist outside the supernatural universe. Therefore, it's pointless to even talk about God. That's my viewpoint. And I don't think. I mean, you're never going to.
Quite a statement.
You already said you can't prove that God exists to me.
Right. I cannot prove that.
Prove it based on evidence.
Evidence.
Now, you're looking at, people, all these people, and you're saying they're all created, they must have been created, and I say that was just evolution. And that life itself and the existence of life is a natural process of the universe itself. It's a natural occurrence.
Good. Well, you got miracles happening, but you don't have a miracle worker. You believe that life comes from non-life? That is a miracle, but you don't have a miracle worker.
Why is it a miracle?
You believe that order and design come out of it chaos. Because there's nothing in my experience or your experience of life that validates that life comes from non-life or that order and design come from chaos. You just don't have any evidence of that. You just blindly believe it.
That order and design. You mean?
You don't have at least you haven't given me any shred of evidence.
And then something occurs, which causes the beginning of life to come, and then you have the evolutionary process that happens. I don't need some supernatural being that can think that did it. It just, as far as I'm concerned, this is just how it is.
Show me how life comes from non-life. Give me a piece of evidence to support that theory of yours.
There is, I don't know the exact, I'm not a biologist, but you have a collection of, I can't remember what the, any biology major?
There's, in labs, there's been experiments with like duplicating the makeup of the primordial soup where proteins have actually formed. They haven't had anything close to RNA or a self-replicator. That's not to say that given enough time, it doesn't happen.
Well, that experiment disproven.
And there's also...
That was disproven long ago. That was Stanley Miller at the University of Chicago. And that was clearly disproven.
The carbon base. There's also theories that the self-replicator came from like clay crystals. There's a lot of ways it could have happened. We don't
No, there
know
are not.
Which is accurate, but it's not to say that it didn't occur that way.
You have no evidence today that life comes from non-life. The Stanley Miller experiment at the University of Chicago was shown to be totally false.
So you believe in God because life exists?
I believe in God because the evidence is life comes from life. Life does not come from non-life. The evidence is order and design come from an intelligent mind. Order and design do not come out of chaos.